The hum of my laptop was the only sound in the quiet of my apartment. It was a peaceful sound, the sound of productivity and a life being built, one video edit at a time. I was Sierra, a 22-year-old aspiring YouTuber, and the world I was crafting online was one of pastel aesthetics, study with me vlogs, and heartfelt chats about navigating your early 20s. My channel, Sierra's Sunrise, was my sanctuary. And in the center of that sanctuary, both on and off camera, was Jake. Jake, my boyfriend of 3 years. My high school sweetheart, the boy who'd nervously asked me to prom under the bleachers and had become the man I envisioned a future with. He was my biggest supporter, my part-time cameraman, the one who'd bring me coffee during late-night editing sessions and whose laugh was the most genuine sound in my blooper reels. Our viewers adored him. They called us #Sierra and Jake Goals. And I believed them. I believed we were. The video I was editing that night was a Q&A, one we'd filmed together just a few days prior. There we were, frozen on my screen, his arm draped comfortably around my shoulders, my head tilted towards him, a look of pure, unadulterated trust on my face. I remember smiling at the image, a warm, familiar feeling spreading through my chest. This was my life. It was good. It was real. I minimized the editing software, the screen going black for a moment before reflecting my own tired but content face. It was time for a break. I opened a new tab, the familiar blue and white of Facebook loading automatically. It was a mindless habit, a quick scroll through the digital noise before returning to my work. And that's when I saw it. A comment on a post from a local community group. It was from a girl, Chloe, someone I vaguely remembered from a party years ago. Her profile picture was of her and a friend, both laughing. The comment was innocuous, something about a new coffee shop. But it was the reply that made my blood run cold. It was from Jake's account. A profile I knew as well as my own. His picture was the one I'd taken of him at the lake last summer, his smile bright, his eyes squinting against the sun. His reply to Chloe was simple. Flirtatious. Guess I'll have to check it out, maybe you can show me around sometime winking face. A winking emoji. A casual, throwaway line in the vast, noisy ocean of the internet. But to me, in the silent stillness of my apartment, it was a tremor, the first crack in the foundation of my entire world. My first instinct was denial. It's just Jake being friendly, a voice in my head insisted, the same voice that had always defended him, that had built him up into a perfect, untouchable figure in my mind. He's like that with everyone. But he wasn't. Not like this. Not with a winking emoji to a pretty girl from our past. I clicked on Chloe's profile. It was public. My heart was a frantic drum against my ribs as I started to scroll. It was a casual, normal feed, pictures of friends, memes, sunsets. And then, my scrolling finger froze. There, nestled between a picture of a latte and a concert video, was a photo of her at what looked like a bonfire a few weeks back. She was smiling, leaning into someone whose arm was around her. The picture was cropped, but I could see the sleeve of the jacket the person was wearing. A dark green, fleece-lined jacket. I knew that jacket. I'd bought it for Jake for his birthday. The room seemed to tilt. The peaceful hum of my laptop now felt like a mocking buzz. I felt a hot, prickling sensation crawl up my neck and into my face. This wasn't a tremor anymore, this was an earthquake. I don't know how long I sat there, just staring, my mind a whirlwind of confusion and a dawning, horrifying clarity. The Jake on my screen, the one in my editing timeline with his loving arm around me, was a lie. The man I loved, the man I shared a home with, a life with, was, what? Flirting. More. I had to know. I'm not a confrontational person. My entire online brand was built on kindness and positivity. But in that moment, a raw, primal need for the truth overrode everything. I opened a new private browser window, a small, shameful act that felt like a betrayal in itself, and I created a fake profile. A generic name, a stock photo of a landscape. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely type. I found Chloe again. I took a deep, shuddering breath and typed a direct message. Hey, sorry this is random, but I think I know you from somewhere. You look so familiar. Were you at the bonfire at Miller's Point a few weeks ago? I hit send before I could lose my nerve. The act felt dirty, deceptive. I was violating YouTube's community guidelines, my own moral code, everything, in this desperate hunt for a truth I was already starting to feel in the pit of my stomach. The reply came faster than I expected. Oh hey, yeah, I was there. It was a fun night. My throat was tight. I typed back, my fingers clumsy. Oh cool, I thought I saw you. You were with that guy, right? Jake. I think I went to high school with him. The three little dots appeared. They pulsed, on and off, for what felt like an eternity. I held my breath, my entire world suspended in that digital ellipsis. Yeah, Jake, he's such a sweet guy. We've been hanging out a bit recently. Hanging out. The words were innocuous, but they felt like physical blows. Hanging out, while I was at home, editing our Q&A video, believing he was working late, or out with the guys. That's awesome, I typed, the words tasting like ash. You two make a cute couple. I wanted to throw up. I was actively digging the hole deeper, pouring the dirt onto my own happiness. The three dots again. Then, her reply. Ah, thanks. It's pretty new, but he's great. We're actually supposed to go out again this weekend, smiley face. The screen blurred. A hot tear escaped and splashed onto my keyboard, followed by another. I was crying soundlessly, my body trembling. It's pretty new. The confirmation was a clean, sharp slice through the last threads of my denial. He wasn't just flirting, he was dating her. He was building a parallel life, one where I didn't exist. The next few hours were a blur of suffocating pain. I closed the laptop, the glow of the screen extinguished, plunging me into darkness. I sat on my floor, my back against the sofa, and hugged my knees to my chest. The silence was no longer peaceful, it was accusing. Every memory I had of us over the past few months began to recontextualize itself. The late nights at work. The new passcode on his phone he'd explained away as a security update. The slight distance I'd felt but had chalked up to stress. It all clicked into a horrifying new picture. I heard his key in the door around midnight. The familiar sound that usually brought me comfort now sent a jolt of ice-cold fear through me. The door opened, and there he was. My Jake. He looked tired but smiled when he saw me. Hey, you, he said, his voice warm. The same voice that had told me he loved me, that had whispered sweet nothings, that had now presumably said similar things to Chloe. You're still up, were you editing? He came over and bent down to kiss the top of my head, his familiar scent of soap and fresh air filling my senses. It made my stomach churn. I couldn't look at him. I kept my head buried in my knees. Sierra, you okay, babe? He asked, his voice laced with concern. The perfect boyfriend act. How long had he been practicing it? I lifted my head. My face was streaked with tears, my eyes swollen and red. I saw the moment his smile faltered, the moment a flicker of confusion, and then something else, a shadow of understanding, crossed his face. What's wrong? He asked, his voice quieter now. I took a ragged breath. Who's Chloe? The name hung in the air between us, a bomb I had just detonated. I watched his face transform. The concern melted away, replaced by a deer in the headlights panic. His mouth opened, then closed. He took a step back. Chloe, he repeated, his voice strained. She's just a girl from a while ago. Why? I saw your comment, I said, my voice surprisingly steady, a stark contrast to the turmoil inside. The winky face. And then I saw her photo. The one from the bonfire. The one where you're holding her, Jake. In the jacket I bought you. The color drained from his face. He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous habit I used to find endearing. Now it just looked like a sign of a guilty man scrambling for a lie. Sierra, it's not what you think, he began, his voice taking on a pleading tone. She's just a friend. We've hung out a couple times, that's all. In a group. That photo, it was just a friendly thing. She thinks you're dating, I whispered, the words tearing out of me. I talked to her. She told me you're great, and that you're going out again this weekend. The last vestige of his composure shattered. His shoulders slumped. The mask was off. The Jake I knew was gone, and in his place was a stranger, caught and cornered. What followed was a torrent of words, excuses, half-admissions, and tearful pleas. He was sorry. He didn't know why he did it. He felt like we'd been in a rut. He was scared about the future. It didn't mean anything. He loved me. He loved only me. But every word was a nail in the coffin of our relationship. The trust, that fragile, precious thing that I had given him so completely, was not just broken. It was shattered, pulverized. The image of him and Chloe, the casualness of his online flirtation, the ease with which he had lied to my face for weeks, it was all too much. You need to leave, I said, my voice hollow. Sierra, please, let's talk about this, he begged, reaching for me. I flinched away. Don't touch me. Just get your things and go. The fight lasted for another hour. There were more tears, more yelling from him, more numb silence from me. But I didn't waver. The girl who had built her life around Sierra and Jake was gone. In her place was someone harder, someone who had been fundamentally changed in the span of a single evening. Finally, he packed a bag, his movements slow and defeated. He stood by the door, looking at me one last time, his eyes red-rimmed. "I'm so sorry, Sierra," he whispered. I said nothing. I just watched as he walked out of the apartment, and out of my life. The door clicked shut, and the silence returned. But this time, it was different. It was the silence of aftermath. The silence of a bomb site. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the same spot, replaying the last 3 years of my life, watching the memories I held so dear curdle and blacken with this new knowledge. The trip to Disneyland. Had he been texting her then? The night we celebrated my channel hitting 10,000 subscribers. Was he thinking of her? It was a special kind of torture, poisoning my own past. The sun rose, casting long, accusing shadows across the living room. My laptop still sat on the coffee table. I opened it. The Q&A video was still there, our smiling, frozen faces a cruel joke. I selected the project file and dragged it to the trash. Then I emptied it. That single action felt symbolic. I was deleting the false narrative. I was erasing the lie. The days that followed were some of the darkest of my life. I called my best friend, Maya, and through hiccuping sobs, told her everything. She came over immediately, holding me while I cried, not saying a word, just being there. Her presence was a lifeline. I told my family. Their anger and support were a different kind of anchor. I was not as alone as I felt. But the online world was another story. Our shared social media was a minefield. Our YouTube channel was a monument to a lie. I couldn't look at it. I disabled comments on our old videos. I couldn't bear to see the hashtag Sierra and Jake goals comments anymore. I knew I had to say something. My channel was built on authenticity, on sharing my life. To stay silent would be to perpetuate the fraud. But the thought of filming a video, of sitting in front of that camera and speaking about this, it felt impossible. The pain was too raw, too private. Yet, the need to reclaim my story, to take control of the narrative that had been so violently wrested from me, began to grow. It was a small, fragile seed pushing through cracked concrete. A week after he left, I made a decision. I would tell my story. Not for views, not for drama, but for me. For the girl who felt broken. For anyone else who had ever had their trust shattered and felt like their world had ended. I set up my camera in my living room. The same spot where I'd sat on the floor and learned the truth. I didn't put on makeup. I didn't set up a fancy backdrop. I wore a simple hoodie, my hair was in a messy bun, and my eyes still held the shadows of heartbreak. I pressed record. "Hey, everyone," I began, my voice shaky. "So, this isn't the video I planned on posting this week." I took a deep breath. A lot of you have probably noticed that Jake hasn't been in my recent videos, and that I've been a little quiet online. There's a reason for that. Something happened, and it's changed everything for me. And then, I told them. I didn't go into salacious detail. I didn't name Chloe. I focused on my feelings. I talked about the shock of discovering the betrayal online. I talked about the devastating process of realizing the person you trust most in the world is not who you thought they were. I talked about the pain of having your shared history rewritten by lies. I spoke about trust, how it's the foundation of any relationship, and how, once broken, it can never truly be fully repaired. "He broke my trust," I said, looking directly into the lens, my voice growing stronger. And that day, the day I found out, it changed everything. It changed how I see the world. It changed how I see myself. The Sierra from before that day is gone. I talked about the shame, the embarrassment, the feeling that I had been fooled. But I also talked about the support I'd received from my real-life friends and family. I talked about the small, hard-won realizations, that his actions were a reflection of his character, not my worth. That I deserved better. "I'm sharing this," I said, tears welling up again, but this time, they felt cleansing, because I promised to be real with you all. And because if anyone out there is going through something similar, I want you to know you're not alone. Your pain is valid. Your anger is valid. It's okay to not be okay. But it's not the end of your story. I ended the video there. It was raw, it was messy, and it was the most authentic thing I had ever created. Uploading it was terrifying. I was exposing my most vulnerable self to the world. The internet could be a cruel place. I braced for the "I told you so's," the negativity, the people who would blame me. The response was not what I expected. The comments section flooded with support. Not just the usual, "Sorry this happened to you," but thousands of stories from people sharing their own experiences with betrayal. Stories of broken trust from partners, friends, family. Men and women, young and old, all connected by this universal pain. They shared words of encouragement, of strength. They thanked me for my honesty. My pain, my true story, had become a beacon for others. My channel, which I thought was ruined, was reborn that day. It was no longer Sierra's Sunrise, a curated, pretty picture of a life. It became Sierra, Unfiltered, a place of real, human connection. In the months that followed, I healed. It was a slow, non-linear process. There were good days and bad days. I went to therapy. I leaned on my friends. I rediscovered hobbies that had nothing to do with Jake or YouTube. I learned to be alone, and then I learned to enjoy my own company. Jake tried to contact me a few times, long emails full of apologies and regret. I read them once, then deleted them. I had nothing left to say to him. My silence was my final word. Forgiving him, for my own peace, was a journey I would take on my own time, but it didn't mean I had to let him back in. The day he broke my trust was the day my old life ended. It was a day of unimaginable pain. But it was also the day I began to build a new life, a stronger, more authentic, and more resilient one. I learned that trust is a gift, and it should be given to those who have earned it through their actions, not just their words. I learned that my worth was not tied to his validation. That day changed everything. It broke me open, and in doing so, it allowed a truer, braver version of myself to emerge. And for that, as strange as it sounds, I am, in a way, grateful. The sunset on my old life had to happen for a new, brighter sunrise to begin. And this time, I was building it all by myself.